So our next speaker is also from Germany, but this time we have Vera talking about the impact of agile learning for testers, and she's a managing director at Quality Minds. And we have you here. Great to see you. Hi.
Hi.
So how is Nordic Testing Days feeling for you at the moment?
Different. It's normally you talk a lot to people and be around, and I get quite nervous before I do my talks, and then I have other speakers around and they help me get through that stage. And today I had to do that on my own, and that was weird.
It is weird, and for me as well. It's weird here. I have these weird walls in this room that I can switch to transparent and see if there's anyone around. There's no one around right now. So
yeah, strange.
But anyway,
it's just strange.
It is a strange experience for all of us. But anyway, I wish you the very best for your talk, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining my talk today, and I'm really looking forward to talk about the impact of agile learning for testers. My name is Vera Gehlen-Baum. I am a CEO at Quality Minds, and internally I am responsible for what we call quality learning and agile learning. So I'm working as a consultant in different kind of projects to help people to improve their learning. And what I do, or what I did in the last couple of years, I took a closer look on how different approaches to learning affect our outcome of our work. And today we are at a testing conference, and Quality Minds is a testing company. So most of the time I'm checking the impact on these different learning styles for testers. And today I'm going to give you a quick introduction on different kind of learning styles. I'm comparing traditional learning styles to quality learning or agile learning. And I'm showing you how that might react or how that might have an influence on impact. So I hope my clicker works. Yes. So I think most of you have already been in a normal training setting. So in a normal corporation, there you might have these yearly reviews where one of your colleagues or your perhaps your manager talks to you in a yearly review saying, oh, that went well, that didn't work so well with me, and I am intending to send you on a certain seminar to that you get more knowledge about a certain aspect, for example, exploratory testing, test automation, you name it. But there's someone else telling you you have a deficit, and we are focusing on improving you on this deficit. And then they might offer you a so-called course catalog where you can choose from different kind of seminars. These were well curated by your HR department, most likely in the beginning of the year, but today is already June, so it might not be perfectly matched to what your actual needs are. And then you are attending the seminar. And then there are two types of seminars. There are the ones who are actually for learning, and I'll start with those. You are attending a seminar on whatever topic your boss chose. And this seminar has a lot of topics in these 2 or 3 days you're attending. But not all of these topics are relevant to you. There might be something in the beginning which you liked very much or where you learned something new. But as the members in these courses are quite heterogenic, it might be that there are a lot of topics which are basically not for you. So they might be too difficult, or they might be too easy. They may just be a repetition. And so you get bored. And for 3 days of seminar, perhaps only 1 day or half a day might be actually what you expected and what you needed at that point. So also after these seminars, putting this knowledge into practice is extremely hard. And therefore it's quite difficult to get everything out of the seminar and put that into your everyday life. And this makes it even more difficult to attend these seminars and really get something out of it. I said this is one type of seminar. There are other types as well. There are those types you're attending, but it's more like a gift to you. It's more like a reward because you did good in the last year, and your boss said, "Hey, I'm giving you something really good for your learning." But actually, it's more the nice hotel, and it's more about the pool and all these little things which make you feel rewarded. And then there's something I always tell at that point. Sometimes we tell children, "Oh, you haven't behaved good, so you have to learn as a punishment." And we see quite clearly that this is a bad thing for learning if you put learning as a punishment. The same is with rewarding. Don't mix these things up. Learning is one thing, but don't use learning and the whole learning environment as a reward because it has a negative influence on learning. So for the next slide, I'm not sure. Thank you. So in overall, these classic classic learning aspects have a couple of disadvantages, especially for the learners, and I'm just call them out. So for one thing, you have a conflict of interest in the role of the team lead or the manager with what might be the need of the learner, him or herself. So because of the team lead, they have to focus on what's necessary for the company and for the team, and while the learner, they like to focus on themselves, and this is important because it has a result on the motivation. So sometimes people might not be as motivated in learning scenarios they haven't chosen for themselves. Also, I just mentioned it, in classic learning scenarios, often there is a lack of transfer because it's really, really hard to transfer learning from one situation to another situation if you don't have any help. And therefore, these kind of learning scenarios are often not as effective as other learning scenarios could be. Also, often these training scenarios are not as adaptive as you might need them because you choose them from a catalog, and they are not adapting to your situation of learning. They are not adapting to your needs. Also, they are not adapting. A lot of trainers find it quite hard to adapt to the whole group, which is basically impossible. If you have 20 people in a room, to adapt to everyone's needs, that's quite problematic to be true. And often these seminars are also, what the manager has in mind is quite output oriented, which means you focus on immediate goals, but you're not focusing on learning goals which might be important for the future. Because currently, we don't know what we need in a couple of years, but sometimes learners already have an understanding of what might be more important for them. And this was the reason why I talked why I'm talking about impact, because when these learning scenarios are a little bit more difficult, they might not have the same impact than other learning scenarios. This guy you see on my slide is Dan. This is Dan Ashby. He's a wonderful and very, very smart guy. And in times before Corona, we met at conferences and we talked about basically everything. We talked about his family, we talked about my family, we talked everything. And then we came to a point where we said, hey, how should learning be and why is learning important? And we had a wonderful evening, and this time at the Romanian testing conference in Cluj, where we talked about what could be the impact of learning. And at the end of the night, we were sitting there, and that was what Dan scribbled on my pad, to show what could be the different aspects on impact on learning and why would it be important to focus on these impacts. And we came up together with the definition, what is actually impact? Impact is the skills and the actions combined in a certain opportunity. So And this is the combination of impact. Basically, most of the time, you need a certain opportunity to show your skills, but you need to have these skills to show the actions, and you need to have skills to show to be able to perform these actions. And this is what causes impact. And therefore, the impact, I'm really, really sorry, it looks a little bit different on my slides, but I hope you can still read it. The impact could be on a personal level, impact can be on a team level, impact can be on a company level, and impact can be on an industry level. But also, impact can be focusing on these levels, on the net knowledge value. So what's the knowledge you're learning about? And as I said, today we are learning about testing, so we always should show an impact on testing. We are focusing on the business value, which could be the customer, which could be the product. If, for example, you're working on a consulting side. We are also focusing on the aspect of impact on giving back. So are you working in a more cooperative learning scenario as coaching, with mentoring, with teaching? Are you working in an internally community, which is a community within the company? Are you also sharing with an external community? So like we're doing today in a learning scenario, which is in a conference, or you might be sharing in big groups over a couple of companies, like best friends networks or something like that. And this is also quite interesting. How much waste are you avoiding? Because sometimes we are learning to react to something. This is the scenario we just talked about, when your team lead or your manager says, "Oh, we need to. You are missing something." But reactive is also always defined by something in the past. So therefore, for avoiding waste, going for a more proactive approach, or I see something I might need in the future, might be more useful in terms of impact. And therefore, let's take a closer look on what might be the impact on traditional learning. It's of course just a rough estimate, because it might change based on what you just heard by Sven about your personality structure and so on and so forth. But in an average, we found out that, of course, the personal level should be there, because of course you attended a seminar, and at least when you try to learn something, there should be on a personal level an improvement on most of these factors. But as I said, what you also can see is it's in terms of avoiding waste, it's more reactive. And you see an improvement on testing, and you should also see an improvement on the customer side or on the product side. So this is something you would expect, because these are the normal things. From a traditional seminar, there is no need of sharing knowledge. If this is something in your personality and you are an extrovert who really likes to share, of course, there might be more impact on internal communities, on external communities. But what we learned in general, that people came from home from their seminars or from some other kind of tutorial, and they were actually not talking about the what they learned, and they weren't sharing enough. So therefore, the impact here was not as much as we hoped for and what we expected. Therefore, we tried a different approach, and we call that our quality learning approach, which bases on the differences on one of the United Nations sustainability goals, that we are focusing more on equity instead of equality. In an equal learning situation, like we are doing today, everyone gets the same. So you're listening to me, and basically what you hear is what you get. That's not quite fair, because you have different kind of prior knowledge, and I am not focusing on your prior knowledge. I'm just focusing on what I like to share. So this is equality. in terms of equity, and this is a more fair learning situation, everyone gets what they need. So I'm taking your motivation into account, I'm taking your prior knowledge into account, I'm taking your interest into account, and therefore it's more what you actually want or need. With quality learning, we are focusing on an individual and on your personal learning goals. So what do you like to achieve? Not what does the management like to achieve, but what do you like to achieve in a certain situation, and why do you like to achieve that? And we offer a lot of assistance in doing so. So you choose your learning goal, and we are helping you to achieve that. How do we do that? With a person we call an agile learning coach. This is not a manager, but this is a person who helps you to fulfill your goals and to go what you're look to achieve what you're looking for. So basically, the whole idea is we are focusing on you as a human individual and you as a human being. We are working in so-called learning sprints. So in the beginning, you have a call with your agile learning coach and you're defining a so-called backlog. So what do you like to learn and why do you like to learn that? Then the learning cycle starts. And in this learning cycle, there's a lot of mentoring included. There's a lot of talking to others, sharing knowledge included. Especially at the end of this learning cycle, you have to show your results to your agile learning coach. So you always know that you have to talk about that. And also within this learning scenario, there's a lot of learning tandems, especially for language skills. And there you can learn basically whatever you want. And this also means you're excited about what you want to learn and you're sharing that with others. Also, at the end of the scenario, there is a retrospective where the learner really focuses on what did I achieve and why and how did I achieve that? Was I successful? Why was I successful? What didn't work and why didn't it work? So in addition to focusing on your content, what you want to learn about, you're also focusing on your metacognition, on what you could improve. So there's a lot of monitoring going on based on the agile learning coach, but also on you based on yourself, that you like that you can see how you can improve here. So this different format for learning has a different role of impact because, as you can see, and I think it's far more proactive, and we are working with different kind of companies who are all working at the same level. So what we can see here is a far more proactive amount of avoiding waste, because when people, and especially also the learning coaches, talk to each other, we are able to identify aspects and motivations and also knowledge which is necessary for testing for the future. So due to our agile learning approach, we were able to implement some learning scenarios, like going more into testing for machine learning, for IoT testing, because our employees at Quality Minds were asking for these kind of things. And we saw that, hey, there might be something in the community which is driving into that direction. Also, the community work really rises because people are interested in what they learn about, and they like to share. Even our introverts really like to share what they are passionate about. Also, as I said before, there is a lot more coaching and mentoring going on, especially also within the learning scenarios, because you're not attending a seminar by someone else, but we are doing most of the teaching and learning within the companies by sharing knowledge. Therefore, like before, especially on a product and customer level, we have an impact, and we can see that impact because people are learning what is necessary for them and what they see necessary, not their manager, but what they feel necessary to improve their work, to improve their product, to whatever they need. And in terms of knowledge, what we could see is we had not only an improvement in testing like we had before, but also in design of how you improve learning scenarios, because people talked about that, and people did their retrospective on how they learned. And of course, they learned a lot about agility, because an agile learning approach, which focuses on a Scrum background, has an impact on how you work in agile environments. And also, some of our customers use this learning approach to include agility into their teams. So if we do a quick comparison, we see the same level and knowledge in testing, but we see a lot more impact on how people interact, how they react, how they are passionate about, and how they can go from a more reactive version to a more proactive version of themselves, and how they can work with these kind of knowledges. So, as a summary, what we could show within this impact model of Dan Ashby, we could show with an individual at the center, and a more goal-based learning scenario, we could support different kind of learnings. We could implement a lot of agile methodology within Quality Minds and within our customers. And we could show, or I hope that I could show you, that it might have a different kind of impact. Of course, you now can argue, oh, with me, this is different. And I won't argue that, because, of course, that might be true, because you're a different person, and you have a different background and whatever. And I talked about the differences on equity and equality. So that might definitely be true. But in general, and when we compared a lot of data, we saw that a traditional learning scenario might not have the same impact, and also research shows that a traditional learning scenario might not have the same impact we could show with a more agile approach, which focuses more on the learner and which focuses more on individual learning goals. And this is it. So if you have any questions, or also in the future, I love to talk about learning basically anytime.
Excellent. So thank you for that. Now let's see if we have any questions on Worksup. It seems that there's nothing, at least that I can see yet. Right. But I have some questions that I wrote down myself just for this for this occasion.
It might be just you and me in this talk.
Maybe, who knows? I could check from YouTube, but I won't, just in case, because I'm also on the same network as the studio, and we had issues in the first hours of the day that you know, with the connections here. So I will do all that I can not to overload the connections. Anyway, so yeah, sorry about the slides also. It's most likely a font issue there, it would seem. So maybe if you can create another PDF of those and send us that the way you sent the first slides as well, so we can share it with the participants with the right font, looking the way they should. That would be good. Oh, and we have questions coming from Worksup. Excellent. So first question is how to integrate this approach into the work with constant high load where there is literally no time.
Yeah, this is what we are actually doing. We are including that in our everyday workload, and we are doing that in two different angles. We have time to talk with our learning coaches, and this takes far less time than attending a traditional seminar. So this is something we block times every week where people have time to learn. And this works even with high workload, because we think it's important that people continue to learn. And so a lot of people just take an hour in the morning or a Friday afternoon where they take 1 hour just to continue learning. Others use, for example, just 15 minutes per day to read a paper, to work on these kind of things. So it's more the consistency, not the time itself. Another approach I'm using quite successfully for quite a while now is to include learning in your backlog. So when you're working as a team, you have your personal learning goals, but there are also learning goals of the team, and including both of them, and also doing an estimate on your learning, including that in your backlog as a regular thing, was quite successful for development teams, and we could see a lot of improvement as well in the software development itself, but also within the team members. So we tend to talk to management very, very openly about that, to really focus on what they get out of learning, and we combine that with including that in the daily routines. Like you do a daily, you also have this 20 minutes, half an hour of learning, and we include it in the backlog as a regular thing.
All right. I was just thinking that should we feel threatened, as in a conference, as a way of learning? But we take it as a motivational event, so.
No, it's the other way around. Um, when I take a look at the quality minds, and we are using this approach for over 5 years now, conferences is still something we attend because you need to get your ideas from somewhere, and you need to talk to people to get their knowledge. And you see that my talk was created while I was talking to Dan Ashby. It's conferences are the least people who are designing conference are the least who are threatened by this approach, because they are, especially because of the community building they are doing, and that people are brought together, they're talking together, they're showing what they're doing, and they bring people to think about their own goals. It's a wonderful addition to this approach, and it's not like giving lectures. It's more bringing to people to think and getting something out of your own learning style. And there are a lot of people who
Mhm.
gain a lot of knowledge on listening to. I just listened to Sven's talk before, and it's interesting because you see so many similarities. But I can choose that, and this is what a conference is all about. I can choose to attend a conference, and I can choose which track to attend. So I have all the opportunities. So it's very similar to an agile learning approach.
All right. Thank you for that. So more questions flowing in. If you would need to use another word than agile to describe this way of learning, what could that be?
For companies who will have an issue with the agility approach, we are using often individual learning, or learner-centered, a learner-centered approach. As I said also before, we came from the term quality learning, but most of the time I'm focusing on the learner-centered or an individual learner approach.
Yeah, that makes sense. Next question. What is the difference in this approach between coach and mentor?
A coach is someone who tells you what to do, and sometimes this is something like a sparring, and this is something you need. So someone on the sideline who helps you through a rough patch, while a mentor is often, from our perspective, more on an eye level. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm asking the right questions. But this is I know that also in literature, the definitions of coaching and mentoring are quite a little fuzzy. So yeah, that's our definition we are at that term using internally.
Mm. So mentors don't tell you what to do. They help you
Yes.
dig into your own sort of experiences and thoughts. All right.
Yeah. While a coach, like in playing football, he's allowed to tell you this is the goal and this is what we're going for.
All right. Excellent. Then are these learning coaches dedicated to that, or is it like a side job for them?
That depends. We implemented a couple of different versions by now. The one we have at Quality Minds ourselves is this is a full-time job. So we have one learning coach for all the Quality Minds, and this is her job, and she's doing that very well. Um, Over time, she figured out that we have more than one learning coach. So we have people sitting in Nuremberg, we have people sitting in Munich, and we had learning coaches on each side. So at that point, when we split it, the group, we also our learning coach, her name is Eva, and she took also on other responsibilities, but this was her choice. Within our customer, we have different kind of situation. We have sometimes HR departments who are also taking on the role of the agile learning coach, and they are using that on the side. So sometimes they have 2 days a week or 1 day a week where they can have these talks with the learners. And the third approach I implemented, and this is the one I'm recommending, especially for software development teams, is to combine the learning coach with either the Scrum Master. This is the role I prefer because this is also the person who should develop the team anyway, and therefore you get more information on an individual level. Or I also implemented it once with a tester. And also there, understanding more about people and what they thrive is normally a good thing to improve software, to improve teams, and so on. And therefore, also it's working quite well with the tester. But this is so how we implement it. So we are putting that in addition to another role, which is already due to quality or is drawn to improving the team anyway. So then it's not a full-time position in general. It depends on how many people are in your team. But for example, if I'm doing that with a normal software team as a Scrum Master, it takes me. I'm doing these learning talks perhaps once a month, or normally I'm in the beginning at all three or every other. Every quarter once. So I have a planning and a retro and a review. And with this, it takes me as a learning coach approximately an hour to talk to every person in the team. So to talk to one person and so on.
Mm-hmm. All right. So
It's not
different,
so kind.
yeah,
Sorry.
different approaches work in different environments. All right. A couple more questions. So these are coming in as you answer the previous ones. This is really cool. That I'm actually thinking that maybe for introverts, for example, it's easier to ask these questions this way than raising your hand at a real conference,
Yes.
or actually like face-to-face conference. Real conference. This is a real conference.
Yes.
All right. So next question is: do you use some certain model as a template for the way of coaching, like Grow, for example?
No, we use our own model.
Okay.
We use what we implemented in the last couple of years for these agile learning scenarios.
Mm-hmm. And currently, the last question from Worksup, I have my own backups as well, and we have 5 minutes still to go. So let's fill that time with as much useful information as possible. How can we sell to the company that we need a training that is seemingly not directly related to your position? For example, a Scrum Master training for a QA person.
How we sell that? Often when you talk to management, they are talking about the direct impact. And what we saw, especially when talking about agility and when we're talking about what we call VUCA, that the world is changing and that we don't know yet what we need in a year. When we opened that room within management positions, that helped a lot, because then it's getting easier to tell them, actually we don't know, and this is the reason why, for example, we are working agile, because we don't know what people need in half a year, and therefore it might be wise to work on experiments and not to see the immediate impact, but to see that people are learning and that they are not only learning something about the content, but they are learning a lot about themselves. And this approach, especially in a more reduced form, was what a lot of our customers really valued. So while at Quality Minds, you can learn basically whatever you like. So you want to learn how to train a unicorn, and we will support that. In our customer companies, often that's not the case. They say, okay, this is the whole scenario, which is quite broad. This is something we think you could learn about, and then you could choose within this whole area. And the interesting part is, if you ever started on that approach, even with this reduced approach, after a while, the management idea about learning changes. And while they in the beginning say, oh no, we are only allowing 5 or 6 topics, when I'm going to the customer after a year, saying, you have one team member who doesn't want to learn about your topics, but they want to learn about communication, for example, or they want to learn about conflict skills. Up to now, no management ever said no when I asked if we could change the framework a little bit, because after a while they see how important it is and how they get results out of that method. They see the impact.
So that also answers my question to how do you build trust, and that's you start small and then you build trust and then you get what you ask for. So essentially, but this is, I would also say that testers are clever people, so you are creative and you can think of ways why this would be better as a tester. So that's kind of how you sell it. If you stretch it too far, then it might be. But yeah, it sounds like this small scale approach is like a gateway drug that you you start with that, and it feels that this is working. Let's do more of that.
Definitely.
So I had another question. There's nothing more from Workshop at this point, but and probably if there is, we won't have time for that anymore. But I was just thinking that if, from my perspective as a learner, this approach sounds to me, even though there's a coach, that I actually need to focus and understand what I need to learn and what I want to learn. What if I just want my career path spoon-fed to me and my learning path?
That happens. But still, even if you want your career path spoon-fed, you are passionate about something. And I'm not asking do you want your career look like? I'm just asking, what do you like to learn? And the interesting part is, most people have something they want to learn about. So sometimes it doesn't have to be directly connected to their career, but everyone I ever met had at some point some form of passion, and this is what I'm supporting.
All right. Okay, but then that's our time for this Q&A session. Thank you again for a very interesting talk and very insightful answers as well to the questions. And like I've said a couple of times already today, this is where I would present you with our gift bag, but now it will have to come to you by mail. So I hope you will enjoy the Nordic Testing Days face mask.
Thank you so much.
Even though we hope that there will not be too much more use for that in the near future, but who knows? So that's it for this session before lunch. We will be back in an hour and then continue with the rest of the talks. Thank you.